Hello everyone. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong with this, but hopefully you can hear me. I had a bit of a problem in the beginning. Today, the book we're not going to be reviewing, because this is not a book review, is this book that I got from The Works. The Works is this little stationers. It sells some books, games, and then I suppose, kind of arty-farty stationery. It's not like stationers like WH Smith's in the UK that sells pens and stuff. It kind of sells random bits of stuff that people tend to glue on things with hot glue guns. Is that kind of a thing, right? If anyone would like to ask me any questions, then please feel free to in the comments, but I'm just going to wangle my way through this as I normally do. So, tarot. Some people have often said that they get the impression that me and Chris from the Thoth Witchcraft Shop don't like tarot, that we look down upon it. That is probably not entirely accurate. What we often do is we don't necessarily look down on the tool. As Chris says, we look down on the tool that reads the tool, i.e. the people. Okay. Now, tarot is a wonderful thing, is a wonderful tool. Okay. But what we like to see is personal development and pushing oneself further and further and further. And what I tend to see with people that gravitate towards tarot is they pick it up and they never really push any further than McDonald's psychics type approach of, well, I'll tell me my future type thing. Oh, I'll tell you your future. I think that you're going to come into a bit of money some point over the next 10 years, that kind of thing, right? It's all a little bit kind of hit and miss, not that great. My first introduction to tarot had nothing to do with reading cards to predict the future or find out information from the past. What they were puzzles. Okay, so what I had when I was younger was a mentor that used tarot. They used the Rider-Waite deck because it was the most easy one to get hold of. And when you're a kid, back in my day, yeah, we kind of had the internet, but you needed a credit card and stuff. You basically needed to be an adult to use the internet, or you needed to get an adult to buy stuff for you, which certainly my dad and stepmom wouldn't have let me buy tarot cards, right? This was a very easy deck to get. The Rider-Waite Smith is what we call it. Rider-Waite Smith deck. And what I was given the task of being given a card and having to earn a card, earn the use of a card. Each card would have a principle, secret, puzzle behind it. And you had to it was used as a focal point, or it was used as kind of like a thumbnail, like we have on YouTube and that, where we have all of these various videos and intricate things, possibly long rambled documentaries and series and stuff that goes on and on and on. A lot of information hidden behind one little thumbnail, right? A book cover, front of something that contains a lot of information. Maybe not such good information, depending on the book, but either way, it was something as a representation of the basic technique that you were supposed to be learning, and it was always kind of technique based. And then there was always adventure. Now, anyone that knows us and follows us in the Witchcraft Live Facebook group knows that we do these witch wars every now and then. They're little tasks and things that you go away and you compete, almost like a competition, and you go away and do. That was how I like to teach. That was basically the approach which I think is the approach that will get you moving the quickest in a direction that is logical. What I don't like about tarot individually, as a specific tool, is that too much of tarot is people thinking about psychic fairs and seeing my future and stuff like that. Look, tarot is so much more diverse than that. There's so many more applications to it. And some people will think, oh, well, the applications of the tarot, obviously, well, if I wanted to do a love spell, I'd get the love card out and I'd do it on that and it would be symbolic and all that stuff. No. Tarot decks have evolved considerably over the years. We started off with fairly simple ones, like the Marseille, for example. If you've got the Marseille, you've got quite simplistic images. So you've got the old minor arcana, which would have been the usual playing cards, yeah? So normal everyday playing cards. And then the major arcana comes along and gets added to it at some point. Some would go on about like the Duke of Milan and some letter as to prove this is roughly when it happened. We don't really give a crap about that, right? All we care about is we care about the practical application. I've never been much really caring for the history within the magical world, whether it would be history of magic or general history of secret societies and that. You'll find that they're clouded in a sea of lies. Most great institutions, tools and such, are surrounded within myths built on lies. So I don't really care how tarot came about. It has evolved. It's evolved from fairly simplistic iconography, which some people still use. This is the major arcana of the Marseille deck, to almost cartoony ones. This is an early 1900s. So this was the Rider-Waite-Smith deck from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And then we have later editions. We have people combining oracle decks, which are basically essentially representations of the energy, such as gods, goddesses, that kind of thing. They think, oh, I know, I can make a bit of money. This whole Celtic thing is really picking up. I know what we'll do. We'll print a bunch of cards with each of the gods and goddesses on from the Celtic pantheon. Not that the Celtic pantheon was necessarily a thing, but we don't care because we're some new age printing company and we just want to make money, right? So my bias is showing, I know. So what is the practical applications of tarot, and do I like this book or tarot books in general? Now, I've always said to people that the little booklet is an example of a little booklet. Here's the one from the Marseille deck. The little booklet that it comes with, the first thing I get people to do is to throw it away, right? Because bonding with your cards is something that all of these books like go on and on about. They talk about bonding as in you're kind of supposed to imprint your stink upon them, i.e. go to sleep with them and push your energy into them and all that sort of thing. I'm not really one for doing that. I think that comes with use. The more I wear this top, right, the more it's probably going to smell of me. Makes sense, doesn't it? The more I use this tarot deck, obviously the worse it's made of paper, so the worse condition it's going to get, because paper don't last forever, right? But also the more I'm going to bond with the imagery in the cards, the more they're going to come up, right? So I'm not really one for, when you get your first tarot deck, going through all this rigmarole of rituals and stuff like that, saying that you've got to, I don't know, kiss it and jump up and down and go to sleep with it, and I don't know, right? That's really not for me. I never ever were really involved with telling people to do that, and I never really did that myself. I've never tried to push my energy into a tarot deck, a brand new deck or anything like that. I'm also not one for saying, one, I can't use your tarot deck. Your tarot deck, that's yours, that's got your energy. I couldn't possibly read the cards, right? I'm going to give you a secret here, something that you don't often hear, but I'm going to tell you because I trust you, okay? Every Rider-Waite-Smith deck, this is the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which is not the original one. The original one goes for several thousands of pounds and is over 100 years old now, I do believe. But this one's called the original Rider-Waite deck. You can get it from Amazon. Anyone you buy from Amazon, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same cards. They're going to look the same. There should be the same amount. If there's not the same amount of cards in there and there's a couple missing, I would ask for your money back because you've been screwed over, right? But each one's the same. If I was to go into someone's house and pick up a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, I should be able to read it because it's the same as mine. If I was to give my one to someone else, what I should not be getting is, oh, but I cannot read that because that's your deck. I cannot connect with it. bitch, please. Come on. I mean, what is this crap about? This is the crap. I'll tell you what this crap about. This is the crap that gets pushed in books like this and makes for very weak tarot readers and weak magical practitioners in general, because it's a bunch of paper with symbols on. Can you charge energy into a physical object? Yes, of course you can. Can you charge paper because it's a physical object? Yes, of course you can. But when it comes to these simplistic questions that I ask people that have been reading tarot for a long, long time, normally they're the professionals you see at the psychic fairs, because generally speaking, professionals at psychic fairs are probably the least likely people to help with a serious question. Honestly, I can tell you that because I've worked at a number of psychic fairs. I've also ran psychic fairs, and I've employed these people. Okay, they're useless, absolutely useless, so useless that you're trusting them to help you see the problems in your life. Seriously, you should ask them about the problems in their lives. They're the last people that should be giving anyone advice whatsoever. But anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent. What do books like this say? Handling your deck. Deck, D-E-C-K. I didn't mean D-I-C-K. Okay. How should you handle your tarot deck? With utmost care and respect. Treat it as you would any precious possession of great value. My tarot deck, if it was passed down to me, it might have some sentimental value. This one I got from 20 quid from Amazon. It's a tool, okay? I don't really care much about it. I've lent this, my personal tarot deck, out to numerous people. I've lent rare editions of tarot decks, ones that cost a little bit of money. There's a KED deck at the moment. I won't tell you any more about that because it's weird. But, and most graphic. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. But I lent that out to someone that I don't know particularly well. Am I going to get it back? Well, I presume that I'm going to get it back. Hopefully I will. But I don't have a problem with giving tarot decks and stuff out. This idea of handling it with care and it's a precious item. Yeah, unless it's something of like actual. Oh, what have we got here? Look what the cat dragged in. Hello, Mr. Kress. Do you handle your deck with care?
That's why I joined.
Oh,
that comment was why I joined. I've been sat here for about 5 minutes.
I didn't
thinking,
know.
do I join him? Do I join him?
Yeah, you should join. So this idea of handling your deck with care, you should respect your tools. I was always taught to respect my tools, respect other people's properties and such like that. But I think they go a little bit too far in these books, having made it like it's some kind of a sacred thing, when in reality it's paper with print on it that, you could just go and buy from Amazon in this day and age. This isn't a rare artifact. I think several hundred years ago, tarot decks were a little more difficult to come across and find. Maybe you treat it a little bit more precious. But what are your thoughts on this idea of it needing a great amount of it being a super bloody precious item, before we move on to the next exciting thing, which will be blessing and purifying your cards, Chris, because I'm sure you'll talk a lot about that.
The bit where they've got to be wrapped in silk and kept underneath?
Oh, but of course. So yeah, would you ever give a tarot deck out to someone else?
I give them out all the time.
I know the answer to that, but I thought they should come out of your mouth. It's not like we don't have several, like about 10 of these that we give to random people during tarot classes and then they give them back. Some people are absolutely horrified at that. What, you mean this deck's been used by other people before? You mean you're going to give it to someone else to use? So it's not a virgin deck. But what about the energy, Chris? What about the energy?
Well, surely you should have enough energy to manage any piece of equipment. You don't pick up a hammer and go, oh, this hammer's been used.
I think it's common sense. I think that when this starts to smell, I put it in the washing machine. But I don't necessarily wait for it to smell to put it in the washing machine. If I'm honest, sometimes I've left it in the back of the car and I've taken it off at the gym and it is a little bit sweaty and I think, yeah, I think that needs to go in the washing machine. But there's like this routine thing, you know? It's the ability to sense and see what's up with your tools. If we were to give our tarot decks out, which we do, we've got loads of tarot decks, give them out during classes, we'll get them back. And let's be fair, if there's been some rancid person, there's been a fondle in them and that, we might get out the disinfectant, right? If they seem somehow energetically stained from something, then you would probably pick it up on that. It is the equivalent of smelling a t-shirt and knowing that actually, yes, that needs to go in the wash. And I feel that that doesn't get put across. Instead, it's this cookie cutter. Every time you get your deck, you need to bless it, you need to cleanse it, you need to do this, that, and the other. You need, like you said, keep it in a silk bag, all this crap. I don't like that.
Do you not think that that goes with the same way that they treat psychic gift?
Yeah.
This idea of opening and closing. The fact that this thing isn't actually capable and access to you when you're not using it.
Well, it's not part of you. It's not like an arm or something that you're supposed to have control over. It's some holy upon holy magical gift that can be revoked at any point. Of course, when people talk about having their gifts taken away from them, it generally means that they've been using that arm a little bit too much and have not been using the proper techniques and magical hygiene and stuff. And it's more like tennis elbow. Yeah. Magical tennis elbow of the psychic variety.
However, if we were to talk about runes and other divinatory tools, then we would kind of just say, well, actually, some of those need locking away. But that's because they have the ability to be possessed by other things. Whereas, you know, I've never known anything want to possess someone's tarot cards. I don't know about you.
Not unless it's been something that I've tried to push in someone's tarot cards, no. But the thing in question didn't really want to possess the cards anyway. So I don't think that counts. Right, so the next section of this book, blessing and purifying the cards. It is a good idea to bless your deck each time before you use it. When you get a new deck, you may want to do a short blessing ceremony before you use it for the first time. This need not be complicated. Simply place the cards in front of you, hold your hands and palms down over them, and say silently or out loud, I call upon the divine powers to bless and protect these cards. For my intention is to use them for good only. Right, there's a couple of problems I've got here. What if you don't want to use them for good? And how the fuck is saying that out loud gonna protect a couple of pieces of paper? You think the things up there really care less that you've done that? And also, this is another thing the book don't get to say. If I was to do that as a mundane person, buy my first deck, say that crap, how the hell do I know anything's even listening to me and that is protected? I hate this complete BS. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are I could go on too big a rant for it to fit in here and actually be of any use. But yes, I struggle with the blessing part. I don't like the way that it's used as some kind of ritual. So there is this kind of start, middle, end with them as if they're a ritual, and you're like, well, it's not a ritual, it's a tool. So, you know, this is a set of cards that are allowing you to have an extension of yourself so that you can have a conversation with yourself. Why does that require a preparatory ritual of this needs to happen, then that needs to happen, then I need to cleanse them afterwards, just in case something terrible tried to get in? Like, you know, like, it's not a communication device externally unless you choose to make it one. and that requires actual effort. You know, it's not a you know, it's not a Ouija board where it's been designed to communicate with people beyond yourself. You know, it is a tool that's extended. It's like using a knife or a fork. It is just an extension of you to make the job you are trying to do easier. It's utility.
I worry a little bit about these approaches because what they're trying to do is they're actually trying to get you to use some kind of cookie cutter approach to make things safe. But they don't do that. The way of making things safe is enabling someone to actually understand what it is they're doing. And that's the last thing a lot of these tarot books will say. There is a reason for this beginning, middle, and end. Starting a session, making it an official opening, much like a ritual or anything like that, is official. I haven't got my hourglass, but I tip it upside down. Client, you're on the clock now. You're being charged for this. When we put the tarot cards down and we do the reading and then we end, that when I'm not under your dime anymore, I don't have to answer any more questions, right? So it makes sense from a business perspective. If you're combining it with spirit work, it makes sense that there'd be an opening and a closing of things because you want a hello, goodbye, you know, and the infill prevents some things from sticking around, particularly if you're doing the opposite of what this tarot book says to do and you're using your cards for nefarious purposes, which some would argue is potentially one of the more fun ways to use tarot cards. But we've got several questions and things, so we'll just take these before we move on. I have my favorite deck, which I keep in a box. My other decks are just here. They're everywhere. I have a deck in most rooms in my home. I don't really wrap them in silk or anything like that. I think that this one you made me, this little bag, this is a little bit broken because it's been very, very well used. These tarot cards go in here. They're the only ones I really use. I've used the Marseille a few times teaching, and I've used the Fanny cards as a kind of jokey kind of thing, which they're just got a bit of wool wrapped around them, you know. I treat these pieces of paper like pieces of paper, which doesn't mean that I treat them badly. I treat them as pieces of paper. Paper is quite delicate, isn't it? So, you know, you may want to protect them logically. You may want to cleanse them if you feel that, much like your jacket or your magic wand or something's retaining a little bit of a something funky and you might want to get rid of it. But what you don't do is you don't put in a book, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then not explain why. Because the person reading the book, the beginner, does not know. What you need to do, and I think initiation into tarot, is using tarot as much as possible. You use the cards as much as possible for multiple tasks. Whether that be, well, actually, I'm going out tonight on the town, I want to see what happens. I don't really care, but I'm using my cards because I need to get used to using the cards. I am going to have a little look at some past trauma. I'm going to do a little bit of shadow work. I'm going to use the cards for that. It is taking magical approaches that you'd normally use another tool for or not a tool at all, and actually saying, I'm going to incorporate my cards into this because then I'm going to get to know the tarot method. Now, most people, when they pick tarot up, they're picking it up for the first time, never really used it before, in which case, like on the Thoth TV YouTube channel, we've got a bunch of silly little courses and games and things people can play to bond with the cards and get used to them. Tarot books, however, they don't. Like this one going through it, it is all about, this is what the upright interpretation of this card means. This is what the reversed interpretation of the Chariot means. This is what this means. And you're supposed to memorize. Sorry, but that, I think, does the opposite. Because what that does is that creates readers that they say, well, it gets you using the cards, but it doesn't. It doesn't get you using the cards. What it gets you doing is putting a bunch of cards down, saying, oh, Mary, yeah, I'll do your reading. I'm learning tarot. Oh, I don't know what that means. Right, that means that you've got this. That means that that's happened. And that means that your husband's cheating on you. But I don't have a husband, Mary says. Well, that's what the book said. Because that's the traditional meaning of that card, right? That's the sort of thing I see. Am I wrong? Do you see
You're
that?
wrong. But the thing is, that's how the world sees tarot, unfortunately, is that they have prescribed meanings.
Yeah.
Completely not a tarot reading whatsoever at all. But at work, I have like a first activity that the students do when I first meet them for the first time, and I say, well, actually, this
involve sacrificing a goat?
It doesn't. But
and then they take the blood and they put a reverse crucifix on, and then they say their name and sign that big black book. Is that the one, or is that the second years or something?
No. Okay. But interestingly enough, we do use a God's eye. So it does have religious significance, the actual item, but I'm not using it in that way. Anyway, but the way in which they, how quickly and how easily they do it, what color choices they make, like you can make assessments on them very quickly. So I use it as a diagnostic tool. But in that same way, it's a kind of going, well, at the end of it, if you do that same thing when I have a new member of staff, they want to know their results. Because you say the word diagnostic tool, or you say, oh, this gives me an idea about you. They want to know categorically how they scored. And I find that's how people use tarot cards, is how close to the original, how close to the answer they get. They're getting a score. And when you get new tarot workers and they go and meet other tarot workers, they kind of go, oh, well, that's not what that card means.
And they say, that's not the way I do it. I don't do it like that. You know?
I don't give a fuck how you do it. Like, it's just, why would we all read cards exactly the same way? How is it an intuitive gift?
Because if you read the book, you assume, they've all read a book and all the books say to do it the same way, because it like science, in it, or maths at least. 2 + 2 = 4.
But Liam, if there is a correct way to read them, why are there so many tarot books?
Because as we all know, the publishing company
would just be one book,
copy and paste the same book.
Wouldn't they? They'd all have one book. You would never have to buy a book with a new deck.
Clearly you've not read many tarot books, because they are pretty much all the same. There's just, depending on how thick the book is, will depend on how much more information it does tell you about the reversed meaning of the 9 of Swords or something like that, What other interesting things are people talking about? I've had the same Rider-Waite deck for 8 years, and as soon as I got it, I did a reading for myself in the car, right in the parking lot. Well, that's good, because that is a way better use of your time and a way of bonding than saying a silly little chant and smearing biologicals on your deck, I don't know anything about runes, but why would a spirit or energy be more interested in possessing them than tarot decks? Honest question. We will be talking about runes at some point, a little bit further. I know we did a video with Will on the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. Do you want to do a little quick answer to that before we move on to the next part? This is not a book review.
Yeah, I'll give a very short answer. So the short answer is, because runes are traditionally made of something that holds energy. So, and you could argue that paper pulp has come from a tree, but it's gone through so many processes, it's no longer, like when somebody says these are 100% chicken nuggets from McDonald's, and you go, well, actually they've been processed so many times, are they really chicken anymore? Anyway, it's that kind of process. So when you have a set of runes that have been made of stone, or they'll be made of wood chips, or whatever they're made of, they will have been used to holding life. So at some point in their history, they would have held life or held energy. And that means that they have a more easier access to being a seat for something else. So you could possess every single rune if they were cut from wood with a different person or spirit or entity into every one of those the runes if you wanted to. But naturally, they will already have an access point because it was once a living thing. So depending on what kind of wood it's made of, will have an impact on what access you're going to have when you access it. But yeah, like tarot cards, who are printed cards in front of you that have been processed to the point that they no longer resemble what they originally were. That you'll have
paper with imagery. You're responding to the imagery and opening up the imagery and getting the imagery almost like a spark that gets you thinking in the right direction. It's hints, hint. So that's what we get with tarot. It's a hint to the answer, and then you process that hint and then connect to, you make the connections in your brain. That is what hints do, isn't it? Or it's a code. So it's a case of, no, not for you. If me and Chris had a conversation and we spoke in, I don't know, codes, metaphors, all that kind of thing, to stop another person from really telling, knowing what's going on, then that would be the opposite. That would be making this more like a secret language. And tarot can be used for that as well. You can have conversations with another reader, or you can have conversations with spirits and stuff, or information can be passed to you, which means that other people in the room will not know what's going on, because this is a language at the end of the day. And do you have that language in your brain? Do you understand it? This is one of the important things with people reading other people's cards. And I don't mean doing tarot readings for other people. I mean, someone does a tarot reading, person A. Person B is who the reading's for. And person C, who's just a general prick, comes along and says, oh, that ain't what that reading means. That ain't what that means. That's not what this is supposed to be. What you need to remember is that the language here, you can look at many languages and they all use ABCs, maybe a couple of extra weird little characters and stuff like that. But just because you see a word with letters that are like English letters does not mean that that is English. Just because you see a tarot deck, the Rider-Waite deck, and you see a spread in front of you, or a bunch of cards put on a table in front of you, or the floor or something, does not mean that you are capable of reading those cards and that spread, which is we see.
The Rider-Waite is the perfect example of that, isn't it? I know you'll probably have already said it because I missed your first few minutes, but the Rider-Waite is there, built by a specific
Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn as a secret code for initiates.
In order to hold information for initiates, which means that actually if they all died out, with the right access, you would be able to recreate their practice, or at least some of it.
Yeah, starting with that card there. That's my favorite card. That teaches you something. What does it teach you? There's a lesson there. Magical ability. But what is it? Well, you're uninitiated, so you do not know. There we go, innit, Chris? Right, what else have we got? I see that I don't use the books with cards at all. That's good. I actually don't read reversed cards. Does anyone else read them, or do you have to include in a reading? Come on, you know the answer to that question. Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? You're the reader, you bloody decide. And there is one exception to that. One exception I will put in. You may decide, no, I don't read reversed readings. But then if you shuffle the deck all the time and try to make sure that they're all up the right way and you keep getting reversed ones out, that may be something telling you you should start doing reversed readings, i.e. there is a big proponent to this if you're connecting to other things, which again, What are you using your tarot deck for? Are you using it for processing for your own brain? You're talking to yourself, or are you using it to connect with something else? If you're using it to connect with something else, not only is that a tool for you, that is a tool for it. It can also use the cards, and it may want to use them in a different way you do, which is another reason why the books ain't that great, because you need to understand what the thing you're using the cards with, your friend or friends from the etheric realms, how do they want to use them? Do they want to put cards there? Do they want to force cards to fall out? Do they not want you to do this kind of, I'm going to count to 10 and get a ping? Do you just get things fall out? All of that sort of stuff. The more you work with the cards, the more you'll notice patterns. And what the patterns aren't is they're not patterns within the cards that you see, oh, well, that's in that card. And then if I turn to that card, he's also wearing that as well. Not that sort of patterns. Patterns through use. Patterns through, well, wait a minute. When there's something really serious, one card always falls out. I get clumsy hands and a card always falls out. Or when I cannot connect or don't know, or there reaches an end to the reading, this certain thing always happens. These are the things that you don't get from books because they're all highly individual, that you only get from paying attention to your own experiences with the tarot. Okay? Again, books aren't the best approach to take if they get you to memorize how things should be. I teach people to read the cards. Anyone that's taken the tarot course will know I get people to shuffle the cards face up. Face up. I shuffle them face up. And do you know, Chris, there's some crazy ass mundanes that have said to me, but isn't that cheating? It's like, bitch, I'm going to tell you your future from a bunch of cards with random pictures on. If it's right, how can it be cheating if the cards are up? Because obviously they're thinking about games of cards, and that actually you couldn't do that in Texas Hold'em, for example. But this is reading tarot. I specifically get and teach people to read cards and deal with them and work with them face up for the simple reason that it screws people's heads over, you know?
Yeah, it's a good test of focus.
Like it is. It really works as well. People get so worried about it. And then with the reversal card meaning, sometimes reversals are a thing, sometimes they're not. What are the cards telling you? The one thing that I find holds the most people back is spreads, because spreads are how you put the cards down and what the corresponding place is of where you put that card and how many you draw and such are supposed to mean. And I always say, you don't go into the reading necessarily knowing what spread you're going to use. There's two processes that I go for. There is either, okay, I know what I'm using my cards for, and this spread makes sense. I want to see the past, I want to see the present, I want to see the future. That makes sense. I'm going to put 3 cards down, one for past, one for present, one for future. That makes sense. But then there's also the perspective of the cards tell you how many to put down and in what order. Sometimes they'll fall out of the deck. Sometimes you'll get I just want to do a never-ending story. I'm just going to pull a card and I'm going to ask it, what am I talking about? Where the hell is this video going? And I pull a card out and it happens to be upside down and it happens to be that one. And then I look at it and I think, this video was progressing rather slowly at the beginning, but then all of a sudden, Chris came and mucked it all up, but now we seem to be getting a flow back together. But we have reached almost the end of our parade. That's what I get from that. But it's a reversed card. But it's a reverse card. Does that mean that it's a parade that's coming to an end? What does that mean, Liam? What does that mean, Liam? Now, I could take you through my thought process, but remember, my thought process will be different from yours, which is another thing that we get with books and saying how you're supposed to interpret the cards. what I've got people to do before is to say, I want you to show me a card. So just go through the deck and show me a card that represents that in 5 minutes time the Wi-Fi is going to pack up and all of this whole thing is going to go kaput and then we're going to have to break the video. Show me a card that shows you that. And that gets them to think, well, actually, they're not thinking in a passive way. They're thinking, well, actually, I need to look at all of those cards until I see something that actually makes sense, that shows me. And it could be something upside down, or it could be something that is, I don't know. I don't know until I see it. But then at the same time, you can also get people say, I can't find one card. I can only find two cards that work together to show me that very one example. I'm sorry, Liam. I just can't do it. All I'm getting is the two cards. Oh, I failed. Which basically means you haven't failed because I've told you to do something. You've gone away and done it. And you've listened to the cards telling you these two. And you've been able to interpret. How many times does that happen, Chris? Where I set someone a task, or you set someone a task, and it's a very clear task, the sort of task the tarot book would set, and the person in the cards come back and say, well, no, I've modified this. I'm sorry, I've modified this. No, you've done what I've asked you to do. You've done it in a different way. Food for thought, people. What about the majors being universal archetypes? Is that from the Golden Dawn? And is that something that has more static meaning? I see a lot of argument about this. There's a lot of argument about tarot and the dynamic and how the cards work in general. There's people that think that swords and cups and all of that link to the classical elements, and there's big debate as to which elements they go by. Is swords, metal that's forged in fucking fire and very destructive? Oh, that couldn't possibly be fire, could it, Chris? That couldn't possibly be fire. There's kind of sticks that are made of wood. No, that couldn't possibly. No. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you the answer to what that is, because guess what? You shouldn't be asking me. You should be asking the cards, and you should be seeing that in the cards. With regards to archetypes are archetypes. They're kind of, some would say metaphors, some would say representations of very stern characters that you might see and be able to relate to. The archetype of a king could be seen as your boss, all of that kind of thing. All of these things are throughout all of these decks, whether it's major or minor arcana. Now there's this whole spiritual dimension of, when they created the cards, there was this whole major arcana being all otherworldly, big, powerful, magical things. It's got things like death and shit like that in it. And the minor arcana, that's all people milling about and doing random crap in it. But actually, within mythology, how many times does death appear as a crooked, weird little old lady? Archetypes, how things want to reveal, spirits, deities, all of that sort of thing. Don't just be looking for them in the major arcana. And don't be looking in the major arcana thinking it's somehow better than the minor arcana. Think about what the cards are telling you. When it comes to the mystical approach to working with cards, you've got to remember this is a puzzle. There are not that many books that will be able to say, here we go, here are the full secrets of the Rider-Waite deck, or the Marseille deck, or this deck, or that deck. Because it's a puzzle, you need to solve the puzzle and be led, because everyone's an individual, and memorizing gets you nowhere. Much like when I showed you the little card with the magical technique, I could tell you what that technique is, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do that technique. It just means that you'll be able to go and tell your friends and make it look like you're mystical and say, that card there equals this technique. How do you know that? Oh, a witch told me. Right. I've got
what I will say about the majors is they obviously did exist long before the Rider-Waite deck. So the majors have had uses long before. So the archetypes existed long before that.
Yes, like archetypes of stories, the old solar story. Look at Superman or all of these Marvel characters. Look at classical literature, all of this kind of thing. You have reinterpretations of stories and things like that. Within tarot decks, remember, when someone or a group of people create a tarot deck, that is a reflection of their perspective, their point of view. When the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was created, that was a reflection, and a lot of Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn teachings were shoved in that. Okay, it may have used older decks like the Marseille as a base for it, but they really put their ideas, knowledge, and such into it. Whereas other decks are missing those. So you need to think what deck you're using for what. Obviously, don't be one of those people that goes around collecting loads and loads of decks and using them for lots and lots and lots of different uses, because you don't need to do that. You can take the Marseille deck and use that for pretty much any application. You can take the Rider-Waite deck and use that for pretty much every application. You know, it doesn't matter. Get to know a deck and see what you get from that. And then it may mean that you get pulled to find something that's better in the future, but what you don't need to do is connecting them. One thing that pisses me off, Chris, is when you go and see these psychics and they've got like 10 decks on the table and they select one, they say, oh, I need to use this one for this type of reading, or I need to use the oracles for that. It's like, this what is this? This isn't a drag race versus some off-road race. I know a Ferrari don't do good in a muddy field and you might need a 4x4, but this is tarot deck. This is using your ability, is making up for your lack of ability. The more fucking different tools you need means, well, the more of a tool you are.
No, but the problem is a lot of these, it's to do with how they were taught. So they'll use an oracle deck for a softer answer when they know someone isn't going to like the hard truth of the Rider-Waite. So, and that's what it comes down to.
Though, isn't it? The psychic can say things in a nicer way. I could use the KED deck, right? If anyone's seen the KED deck, CED deck, that's got some horrible imagery in it, which is why I like it so much. But I could put that down and I could say, yes, I think that this relationship has come to a natural end and that you'll both be moving in different directions, but it's okay because this is supposed to happen, when it's just showing some god-awful scene of some grotesque orgy.
But because you're a robot, Liam, you won't be aware of the nuance of psychology. And actually, a lot of people...
Study of the human mind.
Put a softer deck down in front of them because they know the person can't deal with the harshness of it. At the end of the day, there is a second person there, Liam.
Read like the devil, Chris. That's what I say. Read like the devil. If they don't want to know the answer, they shouldn't have asked the fucking question. And it's not my job as a reader personally to say, I am going to not answer the question you've asked me to. Instead, I'm going to give you a fluffy answer instead of telling you what you actually wanted to know. This goes into how one works as an individual, and people make that decision themselves. I read like the devil. If you ask me a question, I fucking answer it. And I will put it in a slightly nicer approach. If they're, some little old lady, I'm not going to go and say rude language and such.
Why are you looking at that bitch? You're dead next week. Like, I don't think that anyone would want to give that reading. But the point is, these are like McDonald's, aren't they? Which is why we call them Paul's McDonald's psychics. Is because at the end of the day, it's all about repeat business. So a lot of them are like, I'm going to give you something that is empty of calories and of no use to you, and you're going to be hungry in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because I need you to keep coming back to pay my bills.
It's got a lot of salt in it, which tastes good. But not a lot of nutrition.
But what we're talking about is actual practice, which is different to what these fluffy love and light McDonald's psychics like to do.
Chris, I've done a bit of bibliomancy with this book, and it says,
Oh, God.
is your inner knowing trying to tell you something, Chris? It doesn't say the Chris bit. I added that on for full disclosure,
Okay.
right?
You decided it's for me and not you.
Is your inner knowing trying to tell you something? If so, what is it, Chris?
That I need more sleep and I need to stop doing everything.
Oh, is that what your inner knowing says?
Yeah.
What factors are involved in this condition, Chris?
I need to quit off witchcraft.
Need to quit off witchcraft, what, so you can have more sleep? Now it tells me that what we now need to do is to pull a card. Okay, so I can shuffle the deck. I'll shuffle the deck, right? I do a fancy shuffle, right? Where we go like that, look, right? And I'm gonna break it in half, and then I'm gonna take the top card. I don't know which way up. Oh, look, it's a reversed one. There we go. So talk us through your issue of not getting enough sleep, because the book says to ask you what factors are involved in this condition. It says those factors will be within this card, which is very interesting, actually. So what do you see in this card? How do you connect with it?
Well, I need to get off the ceiling for starters.
He does look a little bit like you, I have to say. Look.
I need to get off the ceiling.
Right.
Can I climb back down the tree?
So some people, like Chris, would interpret that card as he needs to get off the ceiling. Other people might interpret that card as, you know, he's got an alcohol addiction to alcohol and he spent last night getting absolutely wasted, you know, all of that kind of thing. You know, within this card, there are many, 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 many meanings. And I didn't draw it for me to read. Chris drew it to read, obviously. So he's telling you some stuff about the ceiling, which is all super mystical. A tea party on the ceiling, that kind of thing. Obviously, he doesn't want to tell us what's really up because he's being
my life is Wonderland.
Unless Chris, did you not get enough from that specific card? And do I need to draw another one to add to it? I don't even know where the card's gone now, actually. I think I put it back in the deck somewhere. Oh dear, it just isn't meant to be, is it? Right, I think we're out of time. I don't know if there's any other questions. I like your video. That just says too simply, look at the picture and describe what it is. What's the best way to get the symbolism?
That's the best way to get the symbolism.
The best way to get the symbolism is going to completely depend on what symbolism you're trying to get. A lot of psychics that use tarot cards, because it's mainly psychics that use tarot cards, want to find out information. Okay, they're interested in answering a question. Okay, not everyone is interested in answering a question. Some people are interested in connecting to something that can teach them something. So randomly picking a card out, I don't know this one. If that's an archetype, King of Cups, if you was to say there's a lesson hidden within that card for you to learn, you're not asking for information. I don't want to know what's going on next week. I want to know, I need to learn in lesson, magical lesson, mundane lesson, whatever, but it's hidden in that card. How do you extract that? Well, if it's a picture of this, which is some person
dressed as a man.
Some person dressed up. You could go to the you could go to the seaside and you could put that clothes on and you could sit on a throne on a big rock in the sea. That's literally a picture of what that card shows. But will doing that teach you that lesson, or is there more symbology in that? What you're trying to do is extract the symbology, because remember that it's hints. Hint, hint. It's all a hint, which means that is a hint. And if you've ever played games that involve hints, some people get it on the first hint. They get that, oh yeah, I know, I understand on the first hint. Some people require 2 hints, don't they? And really thick people require 3 hints, right? Think of that as cards. You're asking a question, you're wanting something, so you pick a card. In that card, somewhere there is a secret answer, a hint at your answer and how to answer the question, a hint at what to do, right? You may not get it, you may get part of it. So then you say, oh, sorry, I need another hint, right? So you pull another card, your extra hint. You look at the two, anything going on in the mind, springing any ideas, anything symbolic, anything? No? If the answer is no, then you need to take the Thoth TV YouTube tarot course. Thoth TV. Thoth TV. Yeah. Symbolism. What you don't do, and what you never do, is go to a book, research symbolism of the card, and then somehow think that that's going to do anything for you, because most of the time it won't. Because remember, this is you, your mind, your psychic ability tapping into something. And if you're not able to get the information from the card, there's something wrong with that process. So that is the problem. Is not that you can't understand the card, is that psychic development is not quite got to that stage where you're really bonding with the card and understanding it. More than likely because you've been trying to memorize the symbolic representations within cards and stuff like that, which is not really a go-to method, which is why we don't use it. By all means, you can read tarot books and stuff like that and get an idea of what other people use and see in the cards, and you might start to see those things in the cards, but you don't need to do that from day one. There's no need to do that. And if you do, from my perspective, I've been seeing people having done that, they tend to stop and stagnate that development with the cards. Because remember, you're connecting with the cards and developing a relationship with the cards and the symbology and imagery within the cards. What you're not doing is you're not developing a relationship with a book as a third party, because this is it. I ask the cards whisper to me. I don't ask the book to ask the cards and get the book to tell me. You see, there's a third party here, and much like many third parties, it's all just a scam. So dodgy salesperson here, when you don't go direct. I mean, some would say that this is a third party, but you know, it is really, isn't it? So that kind of example just completely falls down to the ground, because the cards are an intermediary for people that can't quite throw them aside and just connect. But you know, there's time for that. Develop your relationship with the cards, and then at the end of the day, much like that old friend,
an additional person.
Much like that old friend you made in primary school, you can ditch them as soon as school's over and move on to senior school, make new friends, and they'll be dead to you. They serve their purpose. Goodbye. Much like tarot, when it helps you develop your psychic ability to the point where you don't need it anymore, you can ditch it. Maybe talk to it every couple of years. Bump into it at Costa Coffee and say, oh, remember, hello, how are you getting on? It's basically what Chris does. He don't use the tarot cards, but he does get them out once every 5 years or so. Like bumping into them because they're on the table or something like that. They must scream out to him saying, Chris, it's me. Remember me, Chris? And he's like, fuck, it's that bitch from school. Hello, all right. Oh, it's a long time no see. That's Chris's relationship with the cards.
That's
what my cards
beautiful way to
me.
explain my relationship with cards.
Right, last thing. Oh, right, okay. Any more questions? Sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. Hard truths only. Hard truths only. Okay. I don't know what that means. I'm presuming you're talking about when we were talking about reading like the devil. Now, if you have to deliver like you're a doctor telling someone bad news that they're going to die, you could just come out and say, I'm sorry, mate, you're going to die. Or you could play a little bit more gentle. Some people will not want it put gently. Some people will want it put gently. But either way, you must tell the bitch she's going to die, because this is your job, mate. It is, isn't it? Imagine if you went into the hospital and you had a doctor that just would refuse to tell you you're dying. You know, they're supposed to, but they're like, no, sorry, I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I see it. I see the test results. I see the test results. I just can't bring myself to say what needs to be said. It don't matter because she'll be dead by tomorrow, so I won't got to tell her. I think I'm going to go and play some golf this afternoon and avoid the patient. But there we go. I hope that this was somewhat informative and definitely entertaining. Goodbye, everyone. This was not a book review.